Schools need to change, and in order to do that, leaders need to take a different approach using design thinking. Join us as we discuss 5 leadership roles to make real positive changes in schools. Good afternoon, I'm Megan Denabraga.
And I'm Tammy Williams. And today we're going to talk to you about a book called Design Thinking. We're in the education world, all of us, and so you know there's always a need for change. This gives us a new perspective on how to bring those changes about.
If you take a look at this first quote by the authors, they're discussing how in education it seems that we are always talking how we need to make changes, but that we seem to get a little stuck in the conversation mode and we don't actually implement changes. So they suggest that we take a design thinking approach in order to move away from the conversation and to implement real change. The authors also talk about the concept of disruption, or a complete change in thinking that causes an industry, the concept of the industry, to change the way that it was never considered before. So a couple of examples just to think about is that the biggest taxi company right now in our country is Uber, and they don't own one vehicle. In the hotel industry, Airbnb, which owns no hotels or any kind of accommodation, is the biggest accommodation company. And if you think about learning, a disruption that's happened here is with technology. In the past, children always came to school so that they could learn. And now with technology, they can learn at any time, 24/7. And education and educators need to bear that in mind and incorporate technology into education so that we can address the rapid changes that are going on with technology.
And so when you look at design thinking, that is design-inspired leadership, and that is different from what we've had in the past, being a manager. Normally we are leaders who are managers of multiple tasks all at one time, but Gallagher and Porterson are asking us to be leaders as designers, where you think more about designing a home, designing some clothes, being very creative, thinking outside the box. If you look at the process on the right-hand side, you can see that it begins just like our normal, formal type of bringing about change occurs. We empathize about something, we recognize that there's a need for it, we define what the problem is, and then we normally at that point put a plan in place and implement it. But in thinking about design thinking, you first, they talk about ideating, which is basically you're brainstorming, you're thinking outside the box, really going to a lot of different people to get a lot of different perspectives on things before the change actually occurs. And then rather than just saying this is the only answer, this is the only change, you think about different ways that you can adapt some of the things. So you create a prototype and then you test it out. And where this is a lot of times where we stop the thinking, they think of it cyclically. They're saying, no, we need to continue. If that doesn't work, instead of just tweaking this one idea, maybe we need to throw that out and think of a completely different idea. So really just being creative in our thinking and thinking outside the box. So there are 5 roles in the design-inspired type of leadership. Those are opportunity seeker, experience architect, rule breaker, producer, and then the storyteller, which is a little different than what we're normally used to. So we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about what those 5 roles are and how each of those roles plays into design-inspired leadership. And the first is the opportunity seeker. Now, an opportunity seeker, as defined by the authors, is one who recognizes that there's an unmet need or a problem, and they may actually present incredible opportunities to you. Where some people panic when there's a problem, opportunity seekers think of every problem as an opportunity. You begin to see things through the perspective of a problem finder instead of a problem solver. Problem finders seek ways to bring about positive changes, and they do that by first defining what the true problem is, and then they reframe the problem as an opportunity, and then they have to work to shift not only their own perspective about the problem, but the perspectives of those who are going to be helping with bringing about the change. And then they have to invite in others to see their way of thinking and to see this as an opportunity instead of a problem. The second role is the experience architect. Now, this role is one who relentlessly, in the words of the author, relentlessly focused on creating remarkable experiences, a person who maps out how to turn something ordinary into something very distinctive or even delightful every chance they get. Each experience architect works to create a culture or environment where design-inspired leadership can flourish. To truly understand this role, you have to look at the differences between a culture of compliance, and which is what we normally have in schools, and we want everyone to be compliant in what we're talking about, and a culture of creativity, really asking people to be creative about the things that they're doing. Experience architects create this culture where risks are encouraged and constraints are seen as possibilities.
Next, we're going to talk about the rule breaker. And the rule breaker examines the system, questions the routines and procedures, and challenges why things are done. So if you've ever taken a look at the book called Understanding the Digital Generation by Ian Jukes, he calls this concept tutoiti, the way we always have done it. Routines are followed simply because it had always been done that way without even considering whether it's efficient or effective. The rule breaker questions those rules and changes them to meet the needs of the students, the staff, or the school. Gallagher and Thordarson caution leaders, though, before thinking out of the box, you first have to examine the box. Rules and procedures are established for a reason, so make sure that you understand them before breaking them. They suggest a 3-step process for breaking the rules. Identify a rule or procedure that's impeding your change. Ask why the rule exists, and then modify the rule in order to implement a positive change. A small change can make a big impact. So the next role is the producer. And if you consider your favorite film or movie, the producer took the concept or the storyline and made it come to life with a talented set of actors and a crew set. The producer makes the most of the gifts and the talents of the diverse group of people involved with the project. Not only must the producer be able to keep the global vision as the main focal point, but they must also be able to make on-the-spot decisions and handle momentary crises. From my perspective, that sounds exactly like a school leader on any given day.
So Gallagher and Thordarson remind us that there are 2 ways to share knowledge. You can push information out, which is what we normally do, or you can pull someone in with a story. In the world of education, we use stories every day to keep students engaged, to connect with parents, or to create situations where stakeholders can be drawn into what we're asking them to do. With a design mindset, though, every time we pull people together, we have the opportunity to build and tell a story. There are several skills needed to be an effective storyteller. These include crafting the story, drawing others in, using pictures or visuals to support our story, and finally, your presence while you're telling your story. And we've talked a lot about leadership presence in these courses, so I know we all understand how important it is to be a good storyteller.
So school leaders cannot possibly assume all of these roles alone. Effective change agents know their team and engage the strengths of the members to actively participate in each of these roles in order to achieve the most positive changes within a school.
So to summarize what we've talked about today, we're talking about school leaders as design thinkers. And in order to do that, we have to build a team according to their strengths. We want to hire individuals with the capacity to think and grow, establish protocols that encourage change and growth, challenge or value diversity in staff members, seize opportunities and accept support, be willing to move in new directions, and go flat instead of top down, which may be one of the more difficult things to do. In a top-down world, we're used to accepting direction from the top and just kind of pushing that out. But in design thinking, you're really being what they call flat, which is where everyone's kind of on the same level, so everyone's ideas hold the same amount of weight, and everyone's encouraged to be a design thinker.
So we hope that you've enjoyed our presentation on design thinking. And if you maybe want to take a look at the book, the reference is down there, and maybe you can approach some of the problems in your workplace from a design thinking approach.